Hello, sports fan, and welcome to the Packs for Breakfast NBA All-Star Front Court. That's right, there they are. NBA Front Court. We're doing NBA. We should have baseball, but we don't have our baseball cards today. So we'll finish off our NBA. We'll finish off our front court. We had our back court that had John Stockton and Dominique Wilkins. And now we have our front court that's got James Worthy, David Robinson, the Admiral. James Worthy had a nickname too. James Worthy was Big Game James. And Akeem the Dream Olajuwon. All three of those just amazing players. We did this like 2 weeks ago where we opened up a bunch of packs of cards. Chris and I, we do that every Sunday. 6 a.m. Mountain Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. We open up a bunch of packs of cards. Wasn't a lot of people with us on this most recent one because it was daylight savings and everybody was still sleeping. And we are just crazy enough to still do it at our normal time. So we did it. We stay consistent. That's what we do. Consistent. Consistently mediocre. No, we're better than mediocre. Maybe. That's for you to decide. So let's get into this. Over there, we got James Worthy. James Worthy played for 12 seasons, all of them, with the LA Lakers. He averaged 17.6 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, and 3 assists. He also had 1.1 steals per game. He was a 3-time NBA champ. He was even the Finals MVP in 1988. James Worthy was just one of those guys. It's like I think he played for the North Carolina Tar Heels. And he played on just those great Laker teams with, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Byron Scott, Michael Cooper. Wayne Cooper was a Nugget and a Trailblazer and some other stuff. Kurt Rambis was on those teams, AC Green. There was just so many good players. Although I did lump in Kurt Rambis as a good player, but he was a bench player. That's what Kurt Rambis was. But James Worthy didn't have to do much. I mean, his numbers don't look great, but obviously he was thought of very highly by everybody because he made the NBA 50th anniversary team as one of the best players and the 75th anniversary team as one of the best players. So obviously, the powers that be understood just how good he was. It maybe doesn't show or reflect in his numbers, but he was always a steady force. He was always a good guy for Magic to kick the ball out to. He had a great jumper. It's like James Worthy is just one of those. He was just one of those guys that fit so perfectly on that team. I mean, it was absolutely the perfect team for him to be on. He was a 7-time All-Star. And, just for context, because I love to do this. I love to look at their three-point numbers. Because nowadays, power forwards and centers now shoot a lot of three-pointers. So back in the day, though, you had to figure James Worthy shot 486 three-pointers in his career in 12 years. He made 117 of them. So only 24% from three. But that wasn't what he was supposed to do back then. So it's just kind of funny to look at those numbers now. We'll go to David Robinson, the Admiral. He missed his first 2 years of NBA eligibility because he went and served in the Navy. He was on the Dream Team. He was one of those guys. He averaged 21.1 points per game, 10.6 rebounds per game, 3 blocks per game. We had Dikembe Mutombo and Patrick Ewing up, who are known as really good defensive players. Neither one of them, averaged those kinds of numbers during their careers as blocks. I think they had 2.6 and maybe 2.4 or something like that. I can't remember what the exact numbers were. But that's what they did. David Robinson did 3 blocks. He played 14 seasons, had 2.5 assists. His three-pointers, 25 for 100. A nice even 25%. He played for San Antonio his entire career, 89 to 03. He was a two-time NBA champion. He was the NBA MVP in 1995. He was a 10-time All-Star. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 1992. He was also a scoring champion in 1994 at 29.8 points per game. And you got to remember, this is Jordan era stuff. And David Robinson was able to win as a center the scoring championship. So it's like David Robinson, probably one of those guys we don't talk about enough as being one of the great centers of all time. Because I think he was so quiet. He was a lot like his teammate Tim Duncan. They were both just so quiet and workmanlike, and they just did their job, and you didn't really hear any noise from them, and it's tough. It's tough to get yourself noticed when, you just do your job really well. And it's like, and you don't make a lot of racket, especially when there are a lot of other people who do their jobs kind of well and make a ton of racket. Now, the guy in the middle, and this guy I feel is the best out of all of the players that we've even pulled for, period. I think Akeem Olajuwon is, in my opinion, one of the top 10 players of all time. 21.8 points per game, 11.1 rebounds, 3.1 blocks, 2.5 assists, and for the center, 1.7 steals per game over his 18-year NBA career. Now, his three-point percentage was terrible, 25 for 124, so it was terrible. He played most of his career in Houston, most all of it. He played 85 to 01 in Houston. He did have one season where he played in Toronto at the end, where he got 7 points and 6 rebounds a game. But this guy was a two-time NBA champion in 94 and 95. He was in both of those. He was the finals MVP in both of those championships. He was a 12-time All-Star. He was a 6-time NBA first team guy. He was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in 93 and 94, and he was also on the NBA 50 and the NBA 75. Akeem Olajuwon is one of the few guys that I used to see give Shaquille O'Neal fits. It's like Akeem Olajuwon doesn't look like he'd be big enough to take on Shaq, but Akeem Olajuwon was such a great defender. He moved very well. He had one of the most beautiful turnaround baseline jumpers. I used to love watching Akeem Olajuwon. I just think that this is a guy, when you talk about the greatest players of all time, once again, just a quiet guy that did his job. And he did it so amazingly well. And it's like, he was always one of my favorite players. And it's like, you don't really see, you're not going to see guys like him anymore, because you don't do a lot of that low post stuff. So you're not going to get guys with the soft turnaround jumper. I mean, Jokic, has a beautiful turnaround jump shot. He has a nice little hook. But Akeem Olajuwon, he could defend anybody. It's like he could score on anybody. He gave everybody nightmares. And it's like, I'm glad he did at least get 2 championships. Of course, his 2 championships were in the years Michael Jordan wasn't there. So it's like, it's always kind of one of those things. It's like, would Michael and the Bulls have gotten 8 in a row? Or would these, because those teams had, I think, Clyde Drexler, and they had Akeem Olajuwon, and they had, Robert Horry. They had some really good players on those teams. So you almost wonder, would they have still won those 2 championships and snuck them away from the Bulls? I would probably say no, because Michael Jordan is the GOAT. And that's All-Star for now.